There's this really profound biological paradox that we're all just kind of living through right now. And it's staring us in the face literally every single night.
Oh, yeah, every night.
Right. If you look at the natural world, sleep is so incredibly fundamental to life that it's built into, well, quite literally every single creature with a nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, birds do it, bees do it, your dog does it.
Right, it's inescapable.
Exactly. Evolution essentially decided that shutting down, totally losing consciousness, and leaving yourself completely vulnerable to predators for hours at a time, that's so biologically essential that it's actually worth that massive survival risk.
Which is huge if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
And yet, modern humans are the only species on the entire planet that voluntarily cut their sleep short. We just, choose not to do it.
Yeah, we consciously override this ancient hardwired survival mechanism just to, send one more email or watch one more episode on Netflix.
It's why.
It really is. We're actively fighting millions of years of evolutionary mandate because we think our modern schedules somehow outrank basic cellular biology.
And that tension right there, that tension between our modern ambition and our ancient biology, that's exactly our focus today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here for this one.
So we're looking at some incredibly detailed notes and transcripts sourced from the Ultimate Human podcast, which features human biologist Gary Brecka. And this source material, it doesn't just, give generic advice to get more rest.
No, it goes way deeper than that.
Exactly. It completely dissects the exact, immediate biological consequences of sleep deprivation. We're talking about the micro level of cellular waste building up in the brain, all the way to the macro level of systemic metabolic crashes.
Right. And more importantly, we're charting the actionable protocols the text provides to actually fix it.
Which is the whole mission of today's deep dive. We're not just complaining about being tired. We want to break down what's physically happening under the hood.
We really have to look at those mechanical consequences because, we live in a culture that genuinely treats sleep deprivation as a badge of honor.
Oh, 100%. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Right.
Exactly. The whole hustle culture mentality essentially views sleep as a biological design flaw that just needs to be minimized. So to dismantle that narrative, we need to look at the immediate, terrifyingly fast metabolic consequences of just one bad week.
And the timeline there is what shocked me the most in these notes. The source details this specific study from researchers at Harvard Medical School.
Ah, yeah, the metabolic study.
Yeah, they wanted to see what happens to the body's ability to process sugar when sleep is restricted. So they brought these healthy young men into a clinical research center. And I really want to establish the baseline here for you listening because it is crucial.
Right. The baseline makes the results so much more impactful.
It does. These were young guys with zero health problems, normal weight, and absolutely zero family history of diabetes. They were clean slates in every metric.
Which is smart because deliberately removing all those usual genetic or lifestyle confounders, it really allows you to isolate the single variable.
Exactly. So the researchers restricted their sleep to exactly 5 hours a night for only 7 nights. One single week.
Just a week.
Right. And during this time, they controlled literally every other variable. The food intake was strictly monitored, their physical activity levels were identical, the environment was static. The only thing that changed was the duration of time they were allowed to be unconscious.
And what becomes immediately apparent when you isolate sleep duration like that is, well, it shows how foundational sleep is to our endocrine system.
Right.
So the researchers measured insulin sensitivity using these specialized testing protocols at the end of that week. And the data show that after just 7 days of 5-hour sleep, their overall insulin sensitivity dropped by 20%.
Okay, let's unpack this because a 20% drop is massive. We talk about insulin a lot, and the classic analogy is always keys and locks. Like, insulin is the key that opens the cell to let sugar in.
Sure, that's the standard way to look at it.
But for you listening, since you probably already understand basic metabolism, I want to look at this closer to like a crowded transit system.
Okay, I like that.
Imagine the glucose in your bloodstream are commuters trying to get home. The insulin is the signal that opens the train doors so people can get off the platform and into the train cars, which would be your muscle cells.
Right, so they're trying to get out of the blood and into the muscles.
Exactly. So a 20% drop doesn't just mean a few doors are stuck. It means a fifth of your entire metabolic infrastructure is just totally offline.
Leaving a massive crowd of glucose trapped on the platform.
Yes. Trapped on the platform, which is your bloodstream. It's a massive backup.
And your transit analogy actually sets up the next crucial finding perfectly. because the researchers didn't just measure the glucose trapped on the platform, they looked at the biochemical debris that was causing the doors to jam in the first place.
Ooh, okay. What did they find?
They measured free fatty acids circulating directly in the bloodstream. And after this single week of sleep restriction, the free fatty acid levels in these men spiked by up to 30%.
Wait, really? 30%. So just lacking sleep directly triggers a release of circulating fats.
It does. It's really fascinating. When your body is sleep deprived, it basically perceives a state of physiological stress and energy scarcity.
Like it thinks you're in danger.
Exactly. It triggers a sympathetic nervous system response, essentially an elevated fight or flight state. And that causes your fat tissue to start breaking down and releasing these free fatty acids into the blood to be used for emergency fuel.
Because it assumes you're staying awake for a reason, like you have to outrun something.
Right. But the problem is, an overabundance of free fatty acids directly causes insulin resistance. To go back to your analogy, these fatty acids are like people standing in the train doorways, physically blocking the tracks and preventing the doors from opening.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, they interfere with the intracellular signaling pathways, specifically the phosphorylation cascades that actually allow the insulin receptor to do its job.
So just to be clear, the lack of sleep triggers a 30% spike in the exact fats that cause a 20% drop of your body's ability to handle sugar.
Correct.
You are literally flooding the system with the very compound that breaks the system.
You are. And the compounding effect of that is what leads to the most alarming finding of the entire study.
Hit me.
Within just 1 week, every single participant in the study developed pre-diabetic metabolic conditions.
Every single one.
Every single one. It simply did not matter how fit they were going in, how young they were, or how optimal their health markers had been just 7 days prior.
Okay, that is just everyone in the study crossed the pre-diabetic threshold in a week. I mean, think about the cultural implications of that.
It totally upends how we view health.
It does. Because we have this really pervasive idea that we can outwork a bad lifestyle. We think we can outrun a bad diet by hitting the gym or, optimize our way out of fatigue with the right combination of supplements and cold plunges.
Which is such a trap.
But the source makes it unequivocally clear you cannot supplement or exercise your way around poor sleep. You just can't.
No, biology always wins.
Right, you could have your macros perfectly dialed in, you could be hitting the gym with absolute consistency, but a week of 5-hour nights puts your entire physiology into a pre-diabetic state. You're not getting ahead of the competition, you're just systematically destroying your own metabolic baseline.
And if we follow that biological cascade, systemic insulin resistance doesn't just stay in the muscles and the liver.
Where else does it go?
Well, if free fatty acids are gumming up the insulin receptors in your body, that exact same sleep-deprived blood is crossing the blood-brain barrier.
Oh, of course.
And the brain is the most metabolically demanding organ in the body. It consumes roughly 20% of our total glucose. So when you impair glucose uptake systemically, you're actively impairing the energy supply to the brain, which naturally explains the cognitive impacts of short-term sleep disruption.
Ah, right, the next day fog. The source brings up this research specifically looking at college students, highlighting that those with poor sleep quality demonstrated a 15% lower performance on memory tests compared to their peers.
Which is significant.
It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
A 15% drop is literally the difference between passing and failing a test. But the source makes a very specific distinction when it comes to attention span that I found even more compelling than the memory data.
Yeah, this part is crucial. The text highlights that we aren't just talking about total sleep deprivation, like pulling an all-nighter, which obviously destroys cognitive function.
Right, everyone knows you feel terrible after zero sleep.
Exactly. But the more insidious threat is disrupted sleep architecture. The data shows that just one single night of fragmented sleep reduces your attention span capacity by 30%.
30%.
Yeah.
Just from one night. And by fragmented sleep, we're talking about like you're in bed for 8 hours, but you're waking up constantly, or maybe you're failing to cycle through the necessary stages of deep and REM sleep.
Precisely. Your brain requires a very specific progression of brainwave states to consolidate memories and reset neurotransmitter receptors.
It's an active process.
Highly active. And when that architecture is fragmented, the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for sustained attention, executive function, impulse control, it's severely compromised.
Yeah.
A 30% reduction in attention capacity is an astronomical loss of cognitive bandwidth.
Okay, I really want you, the listener, to think about your own life for a second. Think about staying up until 2 a.m., prepping a slide deck for a massive morning meeting, or grinding out a project late into the night.
We've all done it.
We do it constantly, and we do it because we genuinely think you're being productive. We think we're putting in the extra effort to guarantee a better outcome.
But the math says otherwise.
Exactly. You are walking into that meeting or sitting down to do that deep analytical work with nearly a third of your focus completely eradicated. It is mathematically working against you.
You're essentially attempting to perform complex, high-level executive function with only 70% of your prefrontal cortex's capacity available.
I am genuinely shocked by the math of it. Like, our modern obsession with productivity is biologically destroying our actual ability to be productive.
It's a huge paradox.
It is. But to truly understand why the brain loses 30% of its focus overnight, we have to look a bit deeper into the biological hood.
Let's do it.
Like, what is physically happening inside the skull when the lights go out, and why is that downtime so totally non-negotiable?
Well, to answer that, the source text points us to a relatively recent, massive breakthrough in neurobiology. It's the discovery of the brain's dedicated macroscopic waste clearance system.
The glymphatic system.
Exactly, the glymphatic system.
Which is spelled Glymphatic for anyone looking it up. And the text actually breaks down the naming convention as this sort of portmanteau of glial cells and the lymphatic system.
Right, because the lymphatic system, as we know, is the network that clears metabolic waste from the rest of the body, like your lymph nodes.
Right, right.
But the brain doesn't have traditional lymphatic vessels. Instead, it relies on glial cells, specifically astrocytes, to control the flow of fluid. Hence, the glymphatic system. It's basically the anatomical plumbing network of the brain.
And the mechanical function of this plumbing system is what absolutely blew my mind when reading the source material.
Yeah.
Walk us through the physical mechanics described there. Like, what happens architecturally inside the brain when we finally fall asleep?
It is a dramatic physical transformation. During deep sleep, the brain cells, specifically those astrocytes we just mentioned, they actually shrink.
Wait, they physically change size?
They do. Their end feet contract, which physically expands the interstitial spaces between the brain cells by about 20%.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the way I'm visualizing this, based on the text, is like a major metropolitan city.
Okay, let's hear the analogy.
So during the day, the streets are jam-packed with cars, and there's absolutely no room for the street sweepers to operate. But at night, all the cars pull into their garages.
The cells shrinking.
Right. So the streets suddenly open up, expanding by that 20%, allowing this massive fleet of street sweepers to rush in and just power wash the entire infrastructure.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. And the street sweepers in this scenario are your cerebrospinal fluid.
Ah, okay.
Once the extracellular space expands, cerebrospinal fluid rushes through the brain tissue via convective flow. It essentially power washes the cells and flushes out the metabolic exhaust that has naturally built up over the waking hours.
So the brain is literally acting like a sponge that shrinks and expands.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as the text makes clear, we are talking about microscopic cellular byproducts. This is the biological ash left over from the massive energy consumption required to think, move, and basically just exist.
It's the exhaust of an engine running at a high RPM all day. And if you don't sleep, those brain cells never shrink. The streets never open up.
Exactly. The cerebrospinal fluid can't rush in, and all of that cellular exhaust just sits there, stagnating in the brain tissue.
Ugh, that's such a visceral image. Stagnating brain exhaust.
And that brings us to the most critical component of this cellular exhaust. Because the short-term brain fog we feel, the next day, that's just the immediate symptom. The long-term risk is tied to the specific proteins the glymphatic system is designed to clear.
Which are?
Well, one of the primary waste products washed away during sleep is a protein called beta amyloid.
Okay, beta amyloid is the heavy hitter here. Anyone who has looked into neurodegenerative diseases knows that name.
Oh, absolutely. Beta amyloid is the exact protein that clumps together to form the toxic plaques found in the brains of patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease.
The plaques that basically choke the neurons.
Right. It is a primary biomarker of severe cognitive decline. And the research highlighted in the source demonstrates that just one single night of sleep deprivation actively increases the concentration of beta amyloid in the brain.
Wait, just one night?
One single night.
So one missed night of sleep, and our brain is accumulating the exact proteins associated with Alzheimer's, all because the power wash cycle couldn't run. The streets didn't open up.
That's the reality of it.
That is a terrifying reality to confront when you look at how casually we treat our bedtimes.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, I'll sleep when this season is over.
Yeah, but when you disrupt your sleep architecture, you are actively inhibiting the sole biological mechanism capable of preventing these toxic proteins from suffocating your neurons.
Okay, so if a single night leaves toxic proteins behind to suffocate neurons, what does that look like over decades?
It gets bleak.
Yeah, the source text pivots to the long-term horizon by introducing this monumental study published in the journal Nature in 2021. And the sheer scale of this study makes it impossible to ignore. We aren't talking about a small, 6-month trial with 20 college kids.
No, not at all. The researchers tracked nearly 8,000 people over the course of 25 years.
25 years.
Longitudinal data of this magnitude, tracking real human behavior and concrete health outcomes over a quarter of a century, that is the gold standard for identifying lifestyle risks.
And the methodology they used is fascinating. They basically took snapshots at critical phases of life. So they measured the sleep duration of the participants when they were 50, again at 60, and again at 70 years old.
Right, checking in every decade.
Yeah, and the goal was to see if midlife sleep habits could predict the development of dementia in later decades. But I actually have to push back on this on behalf of the listener, because whenever we look at a 25-year observational study, the issue of causality versus correlation rears its head.
Of course. It's a classic problem with observational data.
Right. Because if someone is only sleeping 5 hours a night in their 50s, they probably have a highly stressful career. Or maybe they rely on alcohol to wind down, or maybe they just have a terrible diet. So how on earth did the researchers prove it was the lack of sleep actually causing the dementia and not the myriad of other lifestyle factors that usually accompany sleep deprivation?
Well, the researchers actually anticipated that exact critique, and the multivariate analysis they performed is what makes the findings so incredibly robust.
So they accounted for that.
Yes. The text provides a vital caveat here. The researchers meticulously controlled for those confounding variables. They mathematically adjusted the data to account for sociodemographic factors, behavioral factors, cardiovascular health, and even existing mental health conditions like depression.
Oh, wow. So they really isolated sleep.
They did. And even after isolating sleep duration from all those other potential causes, the finding remains stark. People who consistently slept 6 hours or less per night during their 50s had a 30% higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who slept at least 7 hours a night.
So what does this all mean? A 30% higher risk of dementia simply for sleeping 6 hours instead of 7.
Just 1 hour difference.
A single hour difference, compounding over decades. It's just the beta amyloid building up night after night because the glymphatic system is being shortchanged by 60 minutes every single rotation.
Exactly. It's like stopping the street sweepers a block early every night. Eventually, that block gets completely overrun with trash.
And there's also a specific insight from this study about changing habits that really caught my attention. The researchers noted that even individuals who started out sleeping a normal 7 hours but transitioned down to 6 hours or less later in life, they showed an even higher risk trajectory.
Which perfectly illustrates the concept of cumulative damage.
How so?
Well, your brain does not adapt to functioning on less sleep over time. We like to think we get used to it, but the biological requirement for waste clearance remains static. By consistently cutting sleep short in midlife, you are materially increasing your risk of neurodegeneration. You don't adapt, you just accumulate damage.
Wow. So for you listening, the sleep choices you are making right now, tonight, whether you choose to close the laptop or watch another hour of television, are actively dictating your brain's physical architecture in your 70s and 80s.
It's a sobering thought.
You're either clearing the plaque or you are choosing to let it build up.
And it fundamentally transforms how we should view our bedtime. It ceases to be this passive daily recovery task and becomes an active long-term investment in your cognitive longevity.
Yeah, that's a huge paradigm shift. But okay, if the biological stakes are this high pre-diabetes in 7 days, a 30% loss of attention after one night, and a 30% increased risk of dementia over decades, we have to ask why we keep doing this.
Right. Why do we sabotage ourselves?
Because our ancestors didn't have to consciously negotiate with themselves to go to sleep. So
Yeah.
we really need to shift from the internal biology to the modern external environment causing all this.
Yeah, we are operating in a completely novel environment, and it's one that is actively hostile to our circadian biology.
Hostile is a good word for it?
The text outlines a gauntlet of modern hijackers that just systematically dismantle our sleep architecture.
And the source lists several specific culprits. Artificial light flooding our homes well past sunset is probably the most obvious one.
Oh, definitely.
But then there's the specific frequency of blue light emitting from our screens. The text notes that this blue light actively suppresses the pineal gland's production of melatonin, and melatonin is the hormone that signals to the body that it's time to actually transition into sleep.
Right, it's the darkness hormone.
Yeah. Add to that the late-day caffeine consumption, pushing the half-life of stimulants deep into the night. And perhaps the most insidious one is the psychological hijack. Yes, work emails and chronic stress following us directly into bed via our smartphones. It keeps the sympathetic nervous system locked in a state of hyperarousal.
And the tragedy here is that we are battling this hostile modern environment at the exact same time we're battling our own aging biology.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the text points out a crucial physiological reality. As we age, our sleep naturally becomes more fragmented.
Just biologically.
Just biologically. The density of our deep sleep, those highly restorative, slow-wave stages where the glymphatic system is the most active, naturally declines as we get older.
Oh, man. So we're really fighting a war on two fronts here.
Exactly.
Just when we need high-quality sleep, the absolute most, to clear out amyloid plaques and protect our cognitive function in our 50s and 60s, our bodies naturally become less efficient at achieving it. And at the exact same time, we surround ourselves with a technological environment designed to disrupt it further.
It's a perfect storm. But the primary countermeasure introduced in the text to fight this two-front war is elegantly simple.
Though probably incredibly difficult for modern humans to execute.
Very difficult. The solution is rigid consistency.
Consistency. So the source points out something wonderfully counterintuitive about this. The longest living populations, the individuals demonstrating the absolute best cognitive function in their later years, they're not the ones sleeping 9 or 10 hours a night.
Nope, they aren't.
They aren't biohacking their way into massive sleep durations.
No, they are sleeping 7 to 8 hours, but they are doing it on an unyielding schedule. The clinical data strongly indicates that irregular sleep patterns, going to bed and waking up at wildly fluctuating times, are associated with severe metabolic and cognitive health risks, regardless of whether the total hours slept over the week seem adequate.
Okay, I know exactly what the listener's thinking right now because it is the exact loophole I try to use all the time.
Let me guess. The weekend binge.
The weekend binge. You have a brutal work week. You sleep 5 hours a night from Monday to Friday, and then you plan to, binge sleep for 10 hours on Saturday and Sunday to, quote-unquote, pay off the sleep debt.
Yeah.
Does the biology actually support that strategy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at how the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the master clock in the brain, actually functions, the answer is a definitive no.
Damn.
Yeah, unfortunately, you cannot retroactively pay off biological damage. Your body operates on a circadian rhythm, which is an internal anticipatory system.
Anticipatory, meaning it predicts what's going to happen.
Exactly. It's designed to anticipate when sleep is coming and proactively orchestrate a massive hormonal and physiological shift. It begins dropping your core body temperature, it initiates the release of melatonin, and it actively suppresses cortisol production.
Right, so it's setting the stage before the curtain even goes up.
Beautifully put. But it can only set the stage if it knows the exact time the performance starts.
Oh, that makes sense.
If your bedtime is 10 p.m. on Tuesday, 1 a.m. on Thursday, and 3 a.m. on Saturday, your master clock is in a perpetual state of jet lag. It cannot anticipate anything. It's constantly reacting rather than preparing.
Because the target is constantly moving.
Right. Therefore, the foundational protocol here is maintaining the exact same bedtime and the exact same wake time 7 days a week, without exception for weekends.
You have to anchor the rhythm. The source really emphasizes that before you worry about mouth tape or blue light blockers or expensive magnesium supplements, you just have to lock in the schedule.
The schedule is the foundation. Everything else is secondary.
Exactly. But once that behavioral foundation is set, the text shifts focus to the physical environment. And this section of the deep dive took a turn I really was not expecting.
Oh, the mattress section?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we aren't just talking about, keeping the room at 65 degrees. The text zooms in on the literal ground zero of your sleep environment, the mattress itself.
It is a massive blind spot in the modern health conversation. And the source leads with a very simple, undeniable premise. Humans spend roughly one-third of their entire lives lying on a mattress.
A third of our life.
When you quantify that exposure, the physical and chemical composition of that surface becomes a critical variable in your overall health.
And the statistics the source provides about the mattress industry are intense. According to the text, roughly 98% of mattresses currently on the market rely on chemical fire retardants to meet federal fire safety regulations.
Right. The industry standard for preventing a bed from acting as an accelerant in a fire involves heavily treating the materials with specific chemicals.
And the text explicitly names compounds like chlorinated trice and antimony trioxide.
Yes. And the biological concern here is that these are not inert substances safely locked away inside the core of a mattress. The text claims these chemicals are actively linked to endocrine disruption, neurological issues, and that some are even classified as known carcinogens.
Okay, I want to dig into the mechanism of action here. Because how do the chemicals inside the foam actually interface with our biology? Like, how are they getting from the mattress into our bloodstream?
Well, the physical mechanism is called off-gassing.
Off-gassing.
Yeah. You're likely familiar with the distinct new mattress smell, right? When you unbox a memory foam product and the whole room smells like a chemical factory for a week.
Right. The volatile organic compounds.
Yes, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. These are chemicals that easily evaporate into the air at room temperature.
Okay, so they're in the air.
And as you sleep, your body weight compresses the foam mattress, acting exactly like a bellows, physically pumping these gases out into your immediate breathing zone.
Oh, gross. Like a giant lung breathing chemicals into your face?
Pretty much. You are spending 8 hours every single night with your face inches away from the source, deeply inhaling these VOCs into your lungs, where they easily cross into the bloodstream.
And importantly, the text notes that this off-gassing process doesn't magically stop once the initial smell fades. It can continue on a microscopic level for years.
Decades, even.
And the source specifically highlights memory foam mattresses as being the worst offenders here, mostly due to their heavy reliance on petroleum-based polyurethanes, chemical adhesives, and synthetic solvents during the manufacturing process.
Which is most of the market right now.
It is. What's most frustrating is the lack of transparency. The text points out that mattress companies hide behind very basic, outdated labeling laws. They are required to list the primary structural materials, but they are absolutely not required to disclose the proprietary chemical additives, the specific flame retardants, or the industrial glues they use.
Which leaves the consumer totally in the dark.
The consumer is essentially sleeping on a chemical black box.
And when we look at this through an endocrinological lens, compounds like antimony trioxide are heavily scrutinized because of their potential to mimic or block natural hormones.
Endocrine disruptors.
Exactly. They can bind to cellular receptors, disrupting the delicate feedback loops that control everything from metabolism to thyroid function. The text argues that immersing yourself in that chemical environment for a third of your life is a massive, uncalculated health risk.
Now, in the interest of strict objective reporting on the source material, we need to cover the commercial pivot the text makes here.
Right, the product launch.
The source notes that the speaker, Gary Brecka, is launching his own product to address this specific issue, called the Ultimate Snooze Mattress. And according to the text, the biological premise of this product is entirely replacing chemical fire barriers with natural organic ones.
Which is an interesting approach to the federal regulations.
It claims to use 100% GOTS-certified organic cotton and New Zealand wool to naturally satisfy federal fire regulations, thereby eliminating the need for petroleum-based foams, toxic glues, or chemical retardants.
And the underlying logic presented in the text is that utilizing tightly woven natural fibers, specifically wool, which contains moisture and keratin, making it naturally flame-resistant, it provides a much safer sleeping environment.
It just hits the standard naturally.
Right. It achieves the regulatory safety standard without the requisite off-gassing of endocrine-disrupting VOCs found in standard polyurethane foams.
The biological argument against VOC exposure is really solid. I mean, think about how many people are out there frantically trying to solve unexplained health issues. They're trying to fix their kids' asthma or their own chronic respiratory issues or unexplained skin conditions.
People will try anything.
They will. They're putting their families on strict elimination diets. They're buying incredibly expensive HEPA air filters for every single room. They're ripping up their carpets, all while completely ignoring the 100-pound block of off-gassing chemical foam that they spend a third of their life breathing heavily into.
It is a massive environmental blind spot.
It's crazy.
Because you can have the most rigid sleep schedule and the perfect pre-bed routine, but if your physical environment is toxic, the biological restorative process of sleep is fundamentally compromised.
So, assuming we have audited our environment and replaced the toxic mattress, and we've committed to a ruthless, consistent sleep schedule to train our circadian rhythm, the text outlines a final set of protocols to lock all of this in.
The bookends of the day.
Exactly. Light and wind down.
Because how you wake up biologically dictates how you will fall asleep that night. The first protocol is morning light exposure. The text states that within 1 hour of waking up, you must get outside and expose your eyes to bright, natural light.
Okay, but why does it have to be outside? Like if I wake up at 6 a.m. and turn on literally every overhead LED light in my kitchen, why isn't that enough to trigger the biology?
It comes down to lux intensity and the specific receptors in your eyes. Indoor artificial light, even when it seems super bright to you, is a fraction of the intensity of natural sunlight, even on a cloudy or totally overcast day.
Really? Even when it's cloudy?
Oh, yeah. Natural light is magnitudes more powerful, and your eyes contain specialized retinal ganglion cells that are specifically tuned to the intensity and spectrum of natural daylight. When that high-intensity light hits those receptors, it sends an immediate, powerful electrical signal directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
The master clock.
Yes. It formally starts the biological timer for your day. It triggers a healthy natural spike in cortisol, which, you want in the morning to feel alert and focused, and it suppresses any lingering melatonin.
So it's clearing out the sleep hormones.
Exactly. By firmly anchoring the start of your day with that light pulse, you make it significantly easier to fall asleep that night because your body's internal timer knows exactly how many hours have passed since the wake cycle was initiated.
It basically sets the physiological dominoes in motion.
That's a great way to put it.
And the evening bookend is all about letting those dominoes fall naturally. The text advises a dedicated wind-down routine 1 hour before bed. That means dimming the lights, putting all screens away, and engaging in something relaxing.
Right, because you are intentionally removing the artificial signals of daytime. By lowering the lux intensity in your environment and removing the blue light that suppresses the pineal gland, you're creating the biological runway for melatonin to naturally rise.
And for your core body temperature to begin its necessary drop.
Exactly.
It's all about intentional signaling. I will note that the source text mentions Gary Brecka, explores these specific mechanisms even further in a 10-month VIP community course called Becoming the Ultimate Human.
Oh, the deep dive course.
Yeah, the text claims he dedicates an entire month strictly to sleep protocols, breaking down sleep architecture, and doing live Q&As based on biometric data rather than just internet trends. So the source definitely provides a deeper rabbit hole for those who really want to track their own data.
And having access to structured data optimization is valuable.
Yeah.
However, this raises an important question. Looking at all these rigid protocols, the exact bedtimes, the mandatory morning light exposure, the complete eradication of evening blue light, the organic mattresses, what happens when real life inevitably shatters the protocol?
Oh, because it will.
Right. Nobody lives in a perfectly controlled, sterile laboratory.
Right. Flights get delayed on the tarmac for 3 hours.
Yeah.
A massive project deadline drops on your desk at 4 p.m. Your kid wakes up sick at 2 a.m. Life happens.
Exactly. And this is where the text offers a profound and honestly necessary biological comfort, the principle of grace.
I love that phrase.
Your biology is incredibly resilient. It has evolved to handle acute stressors. The text reassures the reader that occasional poor sleep is not a death sentence. A late night here or a bout of acute stress keeping you up there will not instantly doom you to dementia or diabetes.
That is genuinely a relief to read because the stress of trying to get perfect sleep can actually become the very thing keeping you awake.
Sleep anxiety is a real thing.
It is. You lie there looking at the clock, doing the math on your attention span dropping by 30%, which spikes your adrenaline, completely ruining any chance of falling asleep. It becomes a vicious, self-fulfilling cycle.
Which is the opposite of what we want.
Right. The ultimate takeaway from the source is vital here. The terrifying studies we analyzed today, the Harvard Metabolic Study, the massive 25-year Nature Dementia Study, they were not looking at one bad night. They were looking at chronic, inescapable, long-term patterns of deprivation.
And that is the biological crux of the argument. Consistency beats perfection every single time.
Consistency beats perfection.
If you miss a night, if your schedule gets completely thrown off by life, your biological systems do not instantly break. The key is to avoid sympathetic nervous system panic and simply get right back on your anchored schedule the very next night. You prevent the exception from becoming the rule.
What an incredible journey this deep dive has been. Let me try to rapidly summarize the biological terrain we've covered today.
It's been a lot of ground.
It really has. We started by dissecting the shocking reality that just one single week of 5 hours sleep drops your cellular insulin sensitivity by 20% and spikes circulating free fatty acids by 30%, literally pushing completely healthy young men into a pre-diabetic state.
And then we connected that systemic metabolic crash to the brain, seeing how just one night of architecturally fragmented sleep robs you of 30% of your prefrontal attention capacity.
We looked at the profound anatomy of the lymphatic system, how the brain's astrocytes physically shrink by 20% to allow cerebrospinal fluid to power wash the metabolic exhaust from our neural networks,
The street sweepers.
the street sweepers, and how failing to let that system run leaves behind toxic beta-amyloid proteins, proteins that a rigorous 25-year longitudinal Nature study explicitly linked to a 30% higher risk of dementia for people consistently sleeping 6 hours or less in midlife.
We confronted the chemical reality of our physical environment, examining how 98% of the mattress industry relies on endocrine-disrupting chemicals that off-gas VOCs directly into our lungs, requiring us to think critically about natural, organic alternatives.
And finally, we locked in the ultimate defense, a ruthless, consistent sleep schedule, firmly anchored by high-intensity morning sunlight and tempered with the biological grace that occasional bad nights are just part of being human.
As we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on the paradox we started with.
Let's hear it.
We noted that our modern obsession with productivity, the relentless hustle culture, is what drives us to voluntarily cut our sleep short in the first place. But knowing the exact mechanisms we unpack today, knowing that skipping sleep systematically drops our attention capacity by a third, severely compromises our metabolic infrastructure, and literally leaves toxic, dementia-linked proteins stagnating in our brains. It raises a powerful, society-wide paradox.
The paradox.
Yeah. Could our collective chronic sleep deprivation actually be the hidden root cause of the exact inefficiency, the pervasive brain fog, and the chronic burnout that our culture is working so desperately to solve?
Wow.
By constantly trying to do more, are we biologically guaranteeing that we achieve less?
That is a question that completely reframes the way we look at our alarm clocks. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope this empowers you to protect your biology, vigorously defend your schedule, and genuinely think twice before you hit snooze, or worse, stay up late tonight. Sleep well, and we'll see you next time.